So I call the regular Board of Public Works meeting for February 26th, 2025 to order. Roll call. So we have all of our board members here, Bob, Richard, Barbara.
Presses with.
Oh, I'm sorry. Presley is on vacation and he's not here. And Andrew Williams, the mayor, Robin Davis, there, the acting general manager, and Mike Hoffman, our legal counsel. Kimberly from finance, and that should be everyone. So, I guess I jumped over. How about the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moment of silence. Thank you. So, the consent agenda. Have a motion to approve, or does anyone want anything pulled from it?
I guess the question on the year-to-date monthly.
Okay, so we'll pull the treasury report separate. Anyone else?
Yeah, that's number 7.
Is there anything else that anyone wants to pull?
Yeah, there is a typo. There was a substantial typo that I apologize for not notifying about in the, which one was it? The December 12th regular meeting minutes of the City of Lewes Board of Public Works on item number, where was it? Item number 6, the general manager's report.
You have it?
Yeah, the first, I have it, the first paragraph talks about, second sentence, no, third sentence. BPW awarded the $1 million water tower project contract to CB&I. I wish it were 1 million. I think it's supposed to be 1 million gallons.
That would be right. I'm with you about the wish, but.
Yeah.
Well, what can we get for $1 million?
And the line above it, the first word says quota malfunctions. Is that, I read that.
Oh, yeah,
but I didn't
yeah.
understand what it meant.
Yeah, I thought that was probably an error too, just. Probably supposed to be equipment malfunctions. Yes.
Okay. So with that, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? We'll pull the treasurer's report out separately.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
4-0, or 1 abstention. No, 1 absent.
1 absent.
All right. Treasurer's report.
Are we jumping to that?
Yeah,
Oh,
because,
no, that's 7, isn't it?
Yeah, we
well,
have that.
actually not treasurer's report, but the, Bob had a question.
So on here I have it as number 7.
Yeah.
And that Inframark is next after the consent agenda.
Hold on, I thought. There's a receiver's treasurer's report. Is that what you want to pull, Bob?
Well, anytime you send me some numbers, I look at them and, you know.
No, it's,
So I guess my real question is, for versus budget and so on, and prior year, we're up about $2.7 million in revenue. and $2 million in expenses, net positive 700,000. So is that likely to continue? There's no clouds on the horizon before the new budget?
I would love to give you that answer. For the quarterly update, I did do the projected year end, but I don't remember that number off the top of my head.
And I think we actually saw that in the finance subcommittee, but for now, it looks okay, and I think you're agreeing with that.
Yes.
But
It is going to be above the original budgeted amount.
there's
But I
no
can't tell you the
particular
exact
cloud
number
you
until-
have that's gonna wipe that out.
No.
All right, I have a motion to approve or receive the treasurer's report. Not yours, the one on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We probably need to clean this up. I guess we should probably just take this off of the consent in the future. All right,
That's a good idea, because I'm always gonna ask questions.
well, and it's just confusing back and forth because,
And throughout this, I would also like to say, I really appreciate Kim and others, dropping out the thousands on some of this, on the
I'm actually gonna
financial
go over
reports.
that. I'm actually gonna go over that.
And, okay, and others who make some of this readable, because even with my magnifying glass, I found out that some of the print was so light that the information wasn't there. Not in treasurers, but other places. So the board should be able to do a better job.
You're
Okay.
here.
I don't like seeing things. I read it with my eyes closed. All right, Inframark report, Jeff?
Good afternoon. So, for last month, I believe that we had discussed that we did have the missed sample that was on the DMR that you received with this report. The sample was missed due to the lab error, so the 5-day letter was submitted, and that is all taken care of.
Is that considered an NPDES violation because it doesn't show as such on your report?
It's considered a missed sample, and it is. If you look at the report on the DMR, there is a 1 under it should be the 4th white box down, all the way to the right, next to the enterococcus. There should be a 1 instead of a 0. Just showing that there was a missed sample for that. And then there's also a comment at the bottom that's very, very small. Sorry, Bob.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. It's the reason why I read these on my computer.
It's the state, it's not me, I promise. Last month, we did go about changing out some burnt out UV bulbs. So I also went ahead and looked at I know we had the question of the replacement panel for the UV system, and we'd had that discussion and decided to hold off on that. So I did also go and get a quote on a replacement system with the aging system, just to give everyone an idea of what that would cost us. The system that I quoted was an inline system as opposed to an open ditch. So the maintenance would be easier, and the cost for maintenance should be lessened. It's half the bulbs, so it should be a lower cost. But that's just something for future reference, I believe, for everyone to keep an eye on.
But did you get a quote for replacement of the system?
For the replacement of the system, yes. I don't know if you guys have received that yet.
No.
No, they haven't. I just got it and it was been looking over and talking to
Yeah,
Jeff
we
about
were just
it.
discussing it, but it's just something to look forward to coming in the future. So it just gives you an idea of what it would cost to replace the system and possibly go in a different direction on a system that's a little bit easier to maintain.
But the system currently,
The system currently is fine. It's
fine.
just getting, I know we had discussion about the board and the equipment aging, and this is just kind of a preemptive, hey, just so we know where we stand and what we'd be looking at if that happened.
because we had done quite a bit of refurbishment of
Yes.
that. So this is nothing critical.
No, it's not critical at all. It's, again, it's more for your information, just so we know, so we have an idea of what we'd be looking at.
And as you'll see in the capital, the proposed capital, it's been on the capital plan for some time as a replacement. But was also about the control panel was on there, which was now
Yes.
been removed. And you'll see on there it's the low figure that's not been updated yet on the capital plan.
Because just for the boards, earlier on, there was discussion that there might be an incompatibility between the new motherboards
Yes.
and the, not working with the old system. And that turned out to not be true.
Yes, currently the new motherboards will work in that system.
Right. So, because that was why I think I was pushing for getting the additional motherboard because of the risk. But that's gone by the wayside now.
Yes. So we did replace and the pump at pump station 15, we had sent up for rebuild. That has been replaced and new piping put in. We changed out the high level float at PS 15, which I believe Barbara, you'd brought up last month that we had just done. So that has been completed. And we changed out all of the floats at another pump station that we'd had fail. And that was on Hornkill. I've been in contact with STH about Tower Hill Pump Station. We've had some issues with that before the board takes full delivery. So they're going to be on site tomorrow to change out the valve or the swing arm sensors. They've been causing issues with the pumps failing, but they'll be here tomorrow morning to take care of that. And the blower system for pump station 19 has been installed, all but the electrical. The weather has kind of hampered that with rain, snow. But I spoke to Rhett this week, and we're going to be out there next week. We have to put in a new electrical panel to run that system. So he's going to come out next week. We're going to shut it down and install a whole new panel. Any questions?
And this isn't for Infomar, for you. Can you just bring the board up to speed on where we are with the generator for pump station 4?
But that's going to be part of the conversation, I think, briefly with Ben has the presentation for pump station 4 on the agenda.
Well, one comment, I've substituted for Barbara on the walkthrough tour,
Yes, sir.
and I learned, but maybe everybody else knows, that you found a better way to clean the membranes.
Yes.
Could you briefly describe that and advantages? Because we're in a public meeting and
Yeah,
I
so.
think it's good news.
So previously, we were pulling the membranes and physically picking the debris out of the membranes. I went to a meeting with operators who run the similar systems and found out that the way that they were doing it was a little different. So most of these systems have a sump or a drain built into the floor so you can get the tank completely clean. We do not have that, which is a disadvantage. However, what we've started to do is we drain the tank multiple times and back flush it with clean water. We then use chemical cleanings to treat the membranes as opposed to physically picking them. And we've seen improved treatment and reduced maintenance and man hours to complete the cleanings.
And you explained the difference between the time it used to take to pick a cassette versus now.
So we can complete a full cleaning cycle on a train in roughly 3 days, whereas previously it would take us 3 weeks.
So a tremendous amount of labor reduction, and frankly, it was a thankless job.
Yes.
And the other thing I learned on that tour was that the planned expenditure for the crane turned out to be unnecessary.
Yes, so when the crane came in to be repaired, they discovered that one of the cranes didn't have a kick plate at the end, which caused it to slant on one side. So once they installed that plate and then leveled the crane out, it fixed all the issues.
Perfect.
Good
And,
stuff.
you know, bringing up, as Bob just talked about, you know, we did do our quarterly walk down. Is that last week? I've lost track of time.
No, no, it
Anyway,
was longer than
Yeah.
we did the walk down, and the plant is probably the cleanest I've seen it in my 8 years on the board. So, you know, I really think you guys should be commended for that.
We appreciate it.
For a wastewater treatment plant or whatever expletive you want to use, it actually, I wouldn't eat off the floor, but pretty close to it.
Now, the mayor wants to know if you drank the effluent. Not this time, but maybe next year.
I drink a lot of things. All right, and,
I have a few questions.
Sure.
I see in the trend chart, the influent versus precipitation. Now, I see that huge spike of 10 inches, and presumably that's snow plus
Yes.
rain, but isn't it kind of a rule of thumb that 10 inches of snow is 1 inch of rain? And wouldn't that be a better way to do it?
So we actually, if you, in the notes on the operations, we actually did put that was a precipitation, was a mix of snow and rain. So when it was recorded as 10 inches. But yes, in practice, it was not 10 inches of rain.
yeah, the problem is, of course, it all depends upon whether it's light fluffy snow or the slush we normally get.
Right, right.
Because I don't think 10 inches is 10 to 1. I don't think that ratio works down here.
Okay,
We can update that,
yeah.
Although if that's cold as it's been, maybe it is.
Yeah, maybe. Another question, on the effluent biological contaminants trend previous 12 months, I got my magnifying glass out that I borrowed from Bob, and noticed that along the bottom, and maybe it's been there all the time, there is a line for TSS monthly average that is along the axis. And then there's one above it that shows actual, so I just pointing it out.
Oh, yeah, I do see that. We'll have to take a look at that. I'm not sure what the line along the bottom would be. The line above that would be the accurate one.
Yeah, I thought so.
Unfortunately, I wish I could have it at 0. I do.
Yeah, it's strange because it's only got a single point on it.
Yeah, at both ends. there's a
Right,
point,
when the
yeah.
other one's got all the data points along the way.
Yes. Yeah, okay. The other thing is when I look through the work orders completed in the prior month, it only shows the proactive ones. It doesn't show any of the corrective actions.
So some of that comes from, we made a change in who's going to be handling the inputting of that data in our system. So I think that's just been a transitional issue. But moving forward, that will be corrected.
Okay. And final question. I see in the maintenance fee expenditures, Hills Electrical Motor Service, a couple of charges for service for pumps and motors. So that's not something your electrician can do?
Let me see where we're,
Service for pumps and motors, it was maintenance fee expenditures.
no,
table.
those are pump rebuilds.
Rebuilds.
Those are pump rebuilds. The way that they come out in their memos is for service, but those are pumps being rebuilt.
Darn. That's all I had, thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Enjoy the warm weather for today. All right, receive the president's report. So there's lots of meetings in the last month. Did the quarterly, as I alluded to, wastewater treatment walk down with Bob Heffernan. Had meetings with the city on the Army Reserve building. We had a joint session with the city. I did screening interviews on 6 candidates for the GM role. And then we collectively, as a board, interviewed 5 people for the GM position in executive session. And we'll do the final formal interview during this meeting later on. So I met with the county over the Rehoboth Beach wastewater treatment plant issues. And last Friday, and I'll go into this in slightly more detail later, or I'll just cover it here right now. On Friday, the Rehoboth Beach turned us down on joint use of the outfall. So we parted ways. The vote was 5-2 from Rehoboth Beach against us and the county. And we now are regrouping to redust off what the alternatives are. And there is a workshop, and I don't know, was it actually set up? It's the 11th at 5.
11th at 5.
So I've been promising for like 6 months now. Now that things have kind of cemented themselves and want to get feedback from the ratepayers, on March 11th at 5 p.m. at the Rollins Center, we will having a workshop where we'll present the pros and cons of the various means going forward and asking for the public's input into those options. And that's all. And at that point, I'll turn it over to Robin for the general manager's report.
Okay, just an update on somewhat of the 3 major projects we have. The canal crossing project. Teal has completed all the connection on Gills Neck Road and the installation of the pipe and the connection on American Legion Road. Starting Monday, they started filling the pipe up, which taking some time because of the length of the pipe and the depth. Trying to purge all the air out. Once that happens, they'll do a pressure test on the line, make sure everything's all right. If it passes, then they'll do a bacteria test. If that passes, ODW has to approve it. Once it's approved, has water in it, we'll do the services, the 5 service lines on American Legion Road. And then we should be totally up and running on that.
And the estimated completion date? Estimated completion date?
Probably 3 weeks, maybe. It's
So-
going out long to fill and the bacteria test and all that stuff.
Right.
Is that, a couple of questions, does that include landscaping, particularly over on Gills Neck Road?
No,
And along
the restoration will take a little
restoration.
longer, yeah.
Okay, and I saw that there's something sticking up out of the ground that I assume will eventually become an hose attachment, hose bib or something for watering purposes and
There's going to be, on the Gills Neck side?
on the Gills Neck side,
Yes,
along the trail.
Yeah, there's going to be, or was, a 2-inch curb stop tied into the line. and that's for the purpose of the irrigation. The city requested that. And hopefully, they're talking also about putting in some sort of potential bottle fill station.
Bottle fill, yeah.
Since it's right there at the end of the line, you would say, the trail.
And is that something that the city will be doing, or Teal? Will that come under us or them?
That's the only thing required of Teal is just to put the curb stop in. We don't know exactly, because they're talking about, the city's talking about putting irrigation in for,
Just to answer that question, I think we earmarked some ARPA funds for the water filling stations. That was an appropriate use, and we did one or two of them. And as Robin said, the water is to service that, but also I think the trees that were removed, then we can water from there too.
Yeah.
But the city, I think that's on the city's plan. Yeah.
The landscaping, the trees will be on the city side.
I think we should be able to use one of those Teddy grants. Is that the case? We're hoping. A tree for every Delawarean.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
okay, on to the field header project. Teal's, again, tied in the main line, installed the main line. They're in the process of tying in the individual wells into that main line. They completed the third well last week and started on Monday on well house number 2. And so we only have one left at that point. Once they get that done, everything should be up and running, and hopefully we'll see a difference in our flows and things like that from that, because of the restriction being gone in that various size pipe that was underground. As far as the new water tower, we held a pre-construction meeting on January 23rd. I worked with the Sussex County Building Department to obtain the required building permit we needed through the county. The contractor has been submitting materials, cut sheets to GMB for review. So we're moving on, and hopefully things will keep progressing nicely. Some of the meetings and events, again, like Tom had said, attended the council meeting. Worked with Ben a little bit on the pump station resiliency study, which hopefully we'll have maybe an update in May, June sometime.
Yeah, question about that. I had in my notes from, or maybe it was in the minutes from the last meeting, that GMB was going to provide a set of options to be pursued at the February meeting, and I didn't see that on the agenda.
Well, that's the pump station 4 thing.
Oh, I thought it was for all the pump stations.
No, that's only for the initial ones.
And
Okay.
we've kind of put pump station 4 and 8 on hold right now because of needing to, I know we keep putting them on hold, but, we now that we have a firm answer from Rehoboth Beach, we can finalize our plans and decide the best path forward.
Also attended the joint city BPW meeting. Had some progress meetings for some ongoing development projects. Sharon and I met with HydroCorp, who's overseeing our cross-connection plan surveying and testing. They sent letters out to the first batch of letters out to our high hazard customers, which are our commercial and industrial customers. They're the ones more of a high risk for potential cross connections. Your residential homes are more in the low because the double check valves usually are in the meter pit, so they're usually the lower. So you want to grab your high hazards first. Attended the finance committee meeting, met with Chantel, the city building department, and GMB to discuss the ongoing paving stormwater project on Ocean View Boulevard. Other than that, that's about the highlight.
Very much. Moving on, finance manager's report. Now,
Yeah, I was so excited, I wanted to. No. And Bob stole a little bit of my thunder, that I formatted the sheets for you to divide by 1,000. It was one of the requests. I'll just have to have a majority that you like it, or you want to go back to the old way of whether you want the font bigger and easier to pull out the high impact numbers, or if you want it to show the full number to make sure everyone reads it correctly. So I just need to, you don't have to do it publicly if you just want to email me or come in.
I like it with the thousands taken out, yeah.
Okay.
I would just recommend maybe noting it on the bottom.
It's at the top on the column headers.
Yes,
It says $000, yep.
yeah.
Can you make that larger? I couldn't read it.
I can, yes. I don't have too much to report overall. The utilities are performing better than budget. For January, the electric usage was high, as we all know. We're still having an issue with the state parks water meter. We're hoping after we get this reading for this month that we'll be able to diagnose the problem. And for year-to-date, our investments made about $450,000 with interest and change in market value. And for cash, the Fulton Bank account is holding pretty steady around 4 million, so I'm gonna be transferring money to our money market account.
So I just want to interject, because there's been a lot floating around about usury charges by utilities for the electric and how high everyone's, bills are. January was 7 degrees below the average compared to last year and prior years. So this is not, correct me if I'm wrong, Kim, anything we did on the rate side. This increases are because of usage.
Correct.
And we know that's tough for people on fixed incomes, but it has been very cold in January. It was still cool in February. So I just wanted to clear that up because there's a lot out there right now.
And if you actually look at line number 9 for purchase power, we're 20% over our budget
Right,
because we had to purchase so much.
right. Okay, thank you. Anything else?
That is it.
Any questions? Okay, moving on. Moving on. Presentation on strategic plan by Spot Stevenson McCoy. Patrick McCoy is on, there he is.
Hi there. Hello, everyone. Sorry I'm not there in person.
No worries. And so I think, did we gonna carry this mostly, or?
I think Patrick was gonna. Hear myself. Sorry. Oh, Patrick was gonna give an update, is that?
Sure. So since the last time that we met with you back in January, we took your notes and went back and made some changes to the plan. And so you should have the final in front of you. The bulk of the changes are in the strategic focus areas, the infrastructure and system improvements, financial sustainability and revenue growth, regulatory compliance and environmental responsibility, organizational development and operational efficiency, and then finally collaboration and stakeholder engagement. So we basically took what we had listed in the prior version. We had a bunch of priority areas that we heard from both the customer feedback and from the workshop that we held with all of you. And so this final plan really narrows it down to the strategic objectives for the 5-year plan. So I hope you had a chance to look at those. If you have any comments, again, as I said, we took the notes that we had from our prior presentation and incorporated those. So I think we've captured everything that people brought up, but happy to talk about those individually any further.
So, I know,
I have the presentation if you wanted me to pull it out.
Everybody's got a copy of it, right?
Yeah, we got it. I know there was some concerns expressed amongst the board, including press, of the methodology that was used this time. And my suggestion is, given what's already been accomplished in this and the other focuses that we have now with the wastewater treatment plant and other things, that we accept this report, and then we can relook at, when it gets redone, addressing some of the concerns that have been expressed. But that's only my suggestion, so I turn it over to the board here.
Well, just a question. So when the city does one, they send it off to, the state has to approve it. Does anybody have to approve this other than?
No, this comprehensive plan.
Just also, this is a strategic plan, correct?
Right.
Which we are going to be doing a strategic plan, but we see that different than a comprehensive plan, which is statutory.
Yeah,
Yeah, this is something that, you know, we're gonna do to provide us more guidance, a strategic plan, but that's not mandated by the state.
I think it's much improved from the input that we provided. So I'm content to leave it as it is and start working on implementation plans.
yes, I think that's.
Yeah.
So, do I have a motion to receive? I guess that's a proper term here, right, Mike? To receive the report or to approve it?
No, to approve it, if your intention is to finalize it and then implement it, it would be a motion to approve.
Okay. I have a motion to approve.
So move. So move.
Second.
All those in favor, or on the question, anyone?
Is this something we want to have a workshop about, or not really necessary?
No, actually, it's probably, once we've developed implementation plans, I'm not sure this
Yeah.
itself, but I think the implementation plans, that might be a very good idea, Barbara.
Okay.
Anyone else's thoughts on that?
Robust answer.
Well, someone has invented chocolate, so. All right, so we had a motion to approve in a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
So it's 4, 1 absent.
And thank you also for the handouts on executing the plan and implementation guide. Are you going to talk about that, or is that just for us to?
Happy to talk about it, but I thought it was just something that you could take a look at and chew on for a bit as you move to the next step. I mean, really the important part is now communicating it to everyone who's got some component of implementing it, and then, you know, really figuring out who's going to be doing that. And then the fun part of figuring out, you know, how do you break down those specific objectives into smaller bites that you can actually accomplish and measure.
All right,
Thank you, Patrick.
thank you very much, Patrick.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
So, first item under old business, open forum, general discussion on the wastewater treatment plan, long-range plans. I don't know that I want to go into much more detail than what I said up front. As we're regrouping, we only got the news on Friday. And frankly, we were very disappointed, I will say that much. But, you know, Rehoboth Beach gets to make decisions that they feel are best for their citizens, and we do the same for ours. So we will be having a workshop, as I said, on March 11th at 5. And we will present to the public the various options, or ratepayers, I should say, the various options, both environmental and cost-wise, and look for the input and go from there
That'll be at the Rollins Center?
at the Rollins Center. I don't know, is there anything else that anyone else thinks we should add, or?
No, it's a completely new direction in the short term. I guess we'll have to come up with a presentation, Robin, or you, or some of us, that sort of explains a couple of options going forward.
And I will say, you know, the county was equally disappointed because this was a tri-patriot deal. And our relationship with the county is still very strong. But once again, the county's got to look out for the county's interest, and we got to look out for BPW's interest. So, anything else? All right, moving on. Open forum general discussion on Indian River Plan shutdown and the impact of BPW rates. Robin, Kim?
I think this was something the press asked to be presented last month, and now he's not here, but Kim was able to go to the DMAC meeting, the most recent one. I wasn't able to go, so maybe she can give a little bit of update on the concerns about the shutdown.
So as you know, the interconnection has been completed. It's 22 months ahead of schedule. DMEC did receive almost a $3.3 million payout from FERC. However, they are still receiving the charges for resiliency must run. And they have not been able to audit the amount that they received, if it's a fair amount that they did receive. And they don't know the future of this charge, if that is coming off. So right now, we're in a holding pattern to see what the actual financial effects are with this 3.3 million, if that's an offset of the payment that we're already making, or if it's in addition to. So it's still up in the air, and once we figure that out, DMAC at the board level will vote what we will be doing if there's any excess funds, of whether we put it into a rate resiliency, we reduce rates, et cetera. And it was also brought up that the capacity auctions, some of the preliminary numbers are as high as $700. Right now, we're paying in the 200s. So there's a lot of moving parts right now for our rates, what's going to be effective for our rates, not just the Indian River. Well, I guess Indian River is related to the capacity auction, so. Great news. We did receive money. We don't know anything else.
We did receive money. We don't know what the money was for,
We don't know if it's a fair amount.
whether it was retroactive, whether
Yep,
it's,
correct,
but other than that, it's perfectly clear.
yes,
But we, as in BPW, did not receive money. It's
correct.
DMEC
It all goes through
who's-
DMEC as the
Yes.
joint action, and then after that, it gets split up pro rata of all the members.
So we will continue to pay the bills that DMEC sends us in accordance with existing agreements.
Correct. Our current wholesale rate.
This is, and it's been totally out of our control, DMAC's control, but this was very poorly handled, I will just state, from all the regulatory agencies and everyone else. But moving on, new business, open forum, general discussion on possible upgrade options for Pump Station 4. So, is there anything that we should discuss or just put this on hold?
I mean, I don't know if Ben can do a brief, but I don't know if there's any, until we kind of have a clearer path, there might not be any.
Come on, Ben, we haven't seen you.
Ben's here.
Identify yourself.
Ben Hearn from GMB. So at the, I'll just maybe give a little history. So at the December meeting, we went over, initially looking at just pump station 4, and doing some improvements there based off of, some issues that Jeff had brought up and along with the generator and whether we put a bypass pump there or not. And then at that meeting, it was kind of looked or asked of us to look at it more on maybe a holistic scale with knowing what's going on with all the, or with the wastewater treatment plant and looking at 3 different options from that. And so that's kind of what we brought to Robin. And I don't know if he shared that with you in terms of a proposal of what that looks like for us to look at that holistic kind of sense of options. I know, I guess the question being, with Rehoboth, that agreement not moving forward, is this something you guys still want to look at or put on the back burner? Maybe not, back burner is not the right word, but on a slight hold until you kind of figure out your path forward.
So for the public's information, the 2 main pump stations we have in town are 4 on Gills Neck Road and 8, which is out by the wastewater treatment plant. And what we need to decide is, right now, everything from pump station 4, the town side, goes to pump station 8 or to the wastewater treatment plant.
Correct.
And do we, if we're gonna pump forward to Wolf Neck, do we upgrade pump station 4 larger and make it the main pump station? Or do we upgrade pump station 8, move it out of the floodplain and make it the main pump forward? And now that we have this decision from Rehoboth Beach, I think we can make a better decision as to which way to go on that.
Can I ask a question?
Certainly.
Currently, 8, I understand, goes to the plant.
Correct.
It's not clear to me from the document where 4 goes, whether it goes in fact to 8, which then, or whether it's independent to the plant, like 8 is independent to the plant, for instance. Can you explain what that?
Yes, so both pump stations go to the plant, I'll say independently until it gets to the headworks where they manifold together right at the headworks of the plant and then dump in.
And the headworks of the plant is the first?
It's the first step in the wastewater treatment
So
process.
they independently have infrastructure that goes and only they get together at the headworks?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
So if pump station 8 goes down, pump station 4 still goes to the plant. It's the force mains that are tied together.
Right, but if 8 breaks down,
There's no sewage from the beach side.
right, what happens to the beach side?
Tell them to
That's
not
why
flush the
there's
toilet.
redundancy built into the pump stations. Am I not answering the question?
If pump station 8 stops working totally, the
Or
effluent,
can't take up
No,
and join?
no,
Yeah, do it.
No.
Right, thank you.
There's one line going under the canal from 4 to the plant.
Okay.
Okay, so.
We have no means of getting from the beach to this side of town.
So those things seem to be need to stop for a while the county is figured out how we're gonna work with the county. Does it make sense to look at some of these others in the meantime, where the other pump stations that were on your list that will remain more or less in the same spot in the grid and so on to upgrade.
In the 16 pump stations that were on the list to look at resiliency and what have you.
Robin gave me a list of where they all are, so I can.
So, yeah, so those pump stations are currently under review. You know, I don't know that I would recommend moving forward looking at them until we get the resiliency study done. If you would like to go for grant funding to get that, to look at those. So we had conversations with DEMA earlier this month, basically saying that we would need to complete the study before we would submit for a grant to complete the engineering of whatever's determined in the resiliency study. So we need to have that study done before we would go for funding for that. Now, if you guys wanted to move forward separate outside of that funding, you know, that's you know, your power.
Remember, I don't remember whether it was the last meeting or the one before, we discussed the issues with the 16 pump stations that are in floodplain and how to handle, because some of them are very, very low, and how you would move the control panels up. Or did we do something like put the control panels on quick
Yeah, there was
disconnects?
a lot of discussion about that.
Right.
But they all sounded like, you know, moonbeam kind of
Well, I don't know.
approaches. And so I guess the reason I asked that is, you know, to pick one or two and sort of be a little clearer about it. Because there were, I mean, at one point, press was throwing out ideas, you were throwing out ideas, and
So can you tell us where you are along the lines with these other 16 pump stations?
Yeah, I mean, so we're working through the process of those 16. I mean, we're trying to evaluate with the electrical engineer some of the kind of things we talked about last meeting, like a quick disconnect panel, you know, ability to make things smaller. You know, how does that look like if it's sitting up high? You know, because some of that relates to like wind load and supporting that.
Richard was asking whether motor starters and other panels could be modernized and smaller and things
Correct.
like that.
And then there's the other side of that grant, which is looking at pump station 3, 4, 5, and 8, which is the engineering designs. And what we had talked about last meeting, and I think the answer was coming back in March with some level of analysis on pump station 3 of doing something different there, whether that's modernizing the building to protect against the flooding elevation, or whether we look at changing it to a submersible pump, and does that have a new wet well here, or, you know, kind of what that looks like. So
Yeah, and so the reason I'm sort of asking was, it was last month, we had a lot of ideas, and so pump stations 4 and 8 are kind of now, you know, down to a lesser priority. So I'd be looking forward to whatever you're gonna tell us in March on the others.
Yeah, because 4 and 8 are kind of a different animal
Yeah,
than the other ones.
so I'm just hopeful that in March we'll.
I'm a little confused about why 4 and 8 are not any longer a priority, because I think regardless of Rehoboth Beach's decision, we're still envisioning that our wastewater will go to Wolf Neck. So the decisions on 4 and 8 haven't really changed from what I can see. I'm confused. Maybe you can explain that to me.
I can't explain it, but maybe the priority needs to be, how much is it gonna cost to get us a line that goes to Wolf Neck, and how much is it gonna cost to get us a line that comes back to the,
I think it's more about, and, Press is in here, so I think we probably should defer this, but, Press is pushing that we upgrade pump station 4 and make it the pump forward. I'm not completely set on that idea because I think building a new pump station next to the old one, from keeping the old one in service at the same time, and being on Gills Neck Road, versus the option of making pump station 8 the pump forward, and then moving it to higher ground closer to the plant would make it hardenable. So I think we need to answer that, because that's gonna really determine the sizing of the two pump stations. Because one's gonna be bigger and one's gonna be smaller.
Yeah, okay, I understand that part of it, but it seems like we want to be on the same side of the canal as where we're pumping to for the main pumping station to go to Wolf Neck.
well, so maybe the question is, tell us a lot about the options between 4 and 8, and presume that we have to have a line to and from the county, and what would you do differently at each, and what are those options? I mean, the option that, call it Press's option and Tom's option, and which is pluses and minuses and better, and do that next month.
To your point, Barbara, one way or the other, we're probably gonna wind up having to put I'm sorry, you're not yelling enough. A pipe under the canal again. Yes. And I know a company that can do that. So, because we do want to be on, because although I will tell you, Hans had a way out idea of how to get there, which was totally different, and I fully don't understand how it's the cost-effective solution. But that's why I think we need to narrow this down to which option and then go forward. But it's by no means on the back burner. It's just that now we can do a holistic pump stations, Wolf Neck, going, and where the discharge goes to.
Thank you.
So
I'm still confused, but not as much.
well, then I didn't succeed.
So what are we asking GMB to?
Right now, just stand by.
If I could just add,
On
so
4 and 8.
we some of the things you were talking about, we've got in this proposal. So what we intended to do, or the way we kind of scoped it out, would be phasing the approach of how we look at it. So phase one, taking a step back, when we were looking at it, there's a ton of different options that, to your point, that you could be considered, whether it's keeping pump station 4 where it is, keep upgrading it where it is, replacing it to a new pump station 4, and the same thing with pump station 8, having it existing, having it upgraded, having it replaced, wherever replacement would locate it, whether it's the current site or the wastewater treatment plant. And so we were like, wow, that's a ton of options to kind of cross compare to all of each other. So one way that we thought about narrowing that down was doing it in a phased approach, where we would look at phase 1, just kind of the hydraulic capacity of pump station 4 and 8, and look at, okay, here's what it can pump, here's what the system would need it to pump, looking out at some future time period, doing a pump or doing a drawdown test in coordination with Inframark, and then looking at, okay, with these existing pumps having this capacity, we're thinking about needing this capacity. Can Pump Station 4, can Pump Station 8 be upgraded to handle in its current footprint that capacity? And we would also be looking at, to Press's option of, can Pump Station 4 site handle a new pump station that the size that would be needed to get to having that as the regional station?
So in answer to the question, and I hadn't seen this before, so they have done a good job of laying out the different options or the pros and cons and what's doable and what's not doable. And, we can get to everyone to read this later on, but this goes right into Pump Station 4A with the pros and cons of each, because the titles
But
are
it looks like,
Pump Station 4 is regional, Pump Station 8 is regional, Pump Station 4 and 8 as separate.
but in reality, all of the greens fall under replacing Pump Station 4.
Right, but what did you replace it with?
I don't know, but it's not, you don't have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 choices.
So,
It seems to
Well,
me,
but
it's
but-
hard to read
But the yellow is also options.
but it's not recommended.
so the yellow, so the way we looked at this is the green are options that would, if we advance to phase 2, the PER side of things, which kind of really at a more, I don't know, focused in level looks and plans things out. The green is the options that would have to be considered. The yellow are options that may or may not be able to be considered based off of the work in phase 1. So if Pump Station 4, no way, shape, or form can handle the regional station in its footprint, then we don't need to look at that in terms of a PER, because, there's no point to it. But if it can, based off our work in phase 1, then it should be looked at, it should be considered, because it's infrastructure that's there that, we wouldn't need to rebuild a whole nother 30-foot deep pump station.
Yeah, but the yellows, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but the yellows are not recommended. It says they're dependent upon what the phase 1 capacity studies show. So the yellows may or may not be viable, as Ben just said.
Correct. We were looking at it as terms of what are viable options. Pump Station 4 in its existing form, based off of the data we've heard before, is not viable. It uses 2 pumps it's a duplex system that needs 2 pumps to get the flow out. That's not a redundant system. So existing, we can't add more flow to it and say it's going to be good.
But this visual doesn't give that specificity of, on, line 2, that doesn't really exist for the yellow, because it does or it doesn't thing. So it's very difficult to understand from this graphic.
Understood.
What really is your choices, no matter how many numbers you put back and forth.
I mean, I'll say it's hard to nail down what options could or couldn't work without looking at it. So this, we were trying to show it in some form that says, Pump Station 4 could be upgraded and Pump Station 8 could be kept as existing. That could be a viable option. We don't know if it'll be a viable option until the capacity studies are looked at. And I know it's confusing, and I apologize for that, but.
I think it was a good attempt. I just can't figure out where on the other side of the canal would be a safe place to build a new Pump Station 8 that wouldn't be vulnerable to flooding, and that we would want to rely on to carry the flow of both the town side and the beach side to Wolf Neck.
Isn't the high point on that high point on that property, 8 feet by the boundary of the pump station and the plant? It's 7 or 8 feet.
I think it's 7. Sorry, I think it's 7 if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to look. It's a multi-zoned. I don't know if it's 6, 7, 7, 8. I can't remember.
Right. So, and when you're at 7 or 8, you can put, water, you could build a pump station that's watertight. The current one isn't, but, with bulkhead doors and such.
Yes, but you've got all the same problems that
Yeah,
the current plant gets criticized with.
right.
Well, but it's a pump station,
I understand.
not,
Not a whole treatment plant, right.
because we still would need some way of isolating the beach side. Because if the beach side gets inundated, we can't send salt water to Wolf Neck. The buggies will not like that.
Well,
And I'm sure the county is gonna want some protection like that.
okay, well, all of this changed Friday, so
Yeah,
it's not
really have not had a lot of time
clear,
to.
crisp answers, but
No, I think what you've done so far is great. But the reason why I suggested we slow it down is so we can take a holistic view of how we're gonna treat wastewater in Lewes.
Understood.
Yeah, and to Barbara's point, I mean, there's going to need to be a 4 or an 8 somewhere. I mean, it's just maybe once we get the clearer picture, then this can be maybe more narrowed down.
Potentially, yeah.
But not.
Do you need to do that hydraulic study first? Should you complete phase 1, or are we asking you to stop what you're doing in phase 1, is my question.
I mean, I'll just add, to me, once we complete phase 1, that becomes a decision point for the board. I mean, that's a certain, I forget what we had in our schedule, a few months down the road to get to that point. That's when we come back and say, hey, this is what we found. What do you think? Like, do we explore this more? Do we explore that more?
Right, I think that that's information we need, and I don't see any reason to stop work on that.
Yes, that's probably correct, because either way, both of these stations are going to be needed. It's just what's going to be the regional, which
yeah.
is not.
Right,
And that's $22,000?
I think that's what we had in there.
Yeah, that's what the number.
yeah.
But are we gonna have enough data from phase 1 to narrow the scope down?
Yeah, so that
We'll
I
be able
think,
to
yeah,
knock some of the.
that's
we'll be
the
able to
goal, was like
clear the
phase,
yellows.
phase 1 will narrow down what yellow boxes can be taken out or have to remain. And that's where we kind of had to give a range for phase 2. If we have to look at, I forget the exact number, 15 options versus 6 options, there's some economies, but there's cost to time and to do that.
Well, I guess I'm okay with spending the $22,000.
Me too.
All right, do I have a motion to, well, hold on, how do we do this?
To separate out phase 1?
Yeah, so it is for action.
Approve completion of phase 1.
As noted.
Yeah, so do I have a motion to accept GMB's proposal dated February 19th, 2025 for phase 1 hydraulic study of pump station 4 and 8 for the sum of $22,500?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Open forum, general discussion on undergrounding electric on 4th Street. Barbara, you asked to put this on the agenda?
Okay, yeah, this was something we were looking at obtaining a grant for to submit to DEMA to get funds for designing and planning undergrounding the electric on 4th Street in, at the same time as we were installing the new water and sewer pipes. At the most recent grant meeting that we had with the University of Delaware, they let us know that we'd really need to submit that to DEMA by March 18th, and I don't believe, in order to get decisions in September that would allow the work to be done, the engineering work to then submit for funds for construction in time to coincide with the construction project for the piping. And March 18th, GMB wouldn't be ready with the proposal for that. And so there are some options that we have. First of all, it appears that all those funding decisions are kind of on hold right now with the new administration. So it may be that there's time because all the schedules may be pushed out a few months. So I'm not sure that we shouldn't be asking GMB to complete the application for the deadline that's still to be announced. But the other option, if we don't want them to do that, is that we could choose to self-fund part or all of the design. We could, for instance, self-fund a design to just put conduit in the street, to later, perhaps, after we get grant funding or some other funding, do the movement of the utilities down underground, but we wouldn't have to open up the streets to do that. So that's a possibility. And so I open it for discussion about what is the view of the board on how we want to proceed. Do we want to, in the meanwhile, ask GMB to put something together to apply for money for an engineering design?
So let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Is the money coming from the state?
No, the application will go to DEMA, and DEMA will forward it supposedly April 18th to FEMA, but all those deadlines have changed.
That's what I was trying to.
Yes, so it'll be FEMA funded.
How close that time was.
Yeah. So DEMA spends a month looking at it, I guess, and then forwards it on to FEMA, which projects they deemed worthy.
What exactly is the scope of moving the wires to underground? There is electric, seems to me, transformers. And there is, hello?
I can hear you.
And there is
Electric and
Comcast
cable, yeah.
and Verizon and, and then there's the linkage from the underground installation ultimately to the houses.
Yes, that's a
One
good
side.
summary, yes.
And what is envisioned in the number of conduits that is being proposed to be installed, and is Comcast and Verizon, are they willing to consider changing all of their cables as well, or are they still going to hang up on the pole attachments?
That would probably be their preference, is not to incur any cost to underground all their stuff. I'm not saying there's something that, I don't know if the city can force them to underground. I don't think that's a possibility.
But to the extent that they don't own the poles, if we remove the poles, wouldn't they have to do something if they want to continue their service?
Yes, I think that's a possibility. Some of these old agreements, I don't know.
It would have to be in line with the agreements which address relocation and reasonable relocation and whatnot typically, but we'd have to review those.
Can't get them to respond
How much money,
on our pole attachments.
how much
that are
would
no-
we be investing to apply for this or make this?
What, the contract we just did for the short distance of conduit that Accutrench is doing out at Pilot Town Village, was it $132,000, I think? We put in 150 for that project, but that was some of inspections. I think the contract for just to install the conduit, just in that little portion of Pilot Town Village from 4th Street to Canary Drive was $132,000.
Just for electric or electric and other utilities?
Just the conduit
electric.
for us.
Yes.
The conduit is only for our electric.
Right, okay, capacity, okay.
Correct.
So we'd still be left with electric and the other cables on the poles until money and time plans that you could pull into the conduit that was in there first, which is the right sequence.
And I should know the answer to this, but I don't. Can you pull telecom in the same conduit?
That's probably a no, I would assume, but
Yeah.
it could be. I
mean,
don't know that either.
EMI interference, I would think that's not.
Isn't that all coax?
Coax is only good to, well, actually, your telecommunications aren't. The cable lines are coax, but the other ones aren't. I'm not,
I would never pull telco with power.
I'm sorry, what?
I would never put telco and power together.
Right, that's the standard in the industry is,
There's a lot of reasons.
yeah. So you're really talking about having to lay
Double,
two sets of
double
conduits.
conduit, yeah.
And would it be the idea of we laid the conduit for future Verizon or Comcast?
Yes.
And then that goes back to,
And is
If
it
they don't-
one conduit that will contain two different company wires, or is it just each conduit only has the one company?
I don't see any interaction between cable, coax, and telecommunications. Josh, you?
Everyone typically just pulls their own telco line.
Josh, would you move to the microphone?
I'm not proclaiming to be the expert, but hang on, I gotta take that out. But there's a lot of reasons, mostly safety. You would never want high volt and low volt in the same box, just because the low volt guys aren't necessarily certified to work in those high power areas. And typically people pull their own lines, their own conduits, so that way there's no chance of somebody else's work disrupting their service. So those are a few reasons. And I typically, and again, I'm not the expert, so you can certainly get Ben or somebody else up here.
Another wrinkle in this whole thing is that GMB doesn't do electrical design work. And so we would have to contract out with, say, Sergeant Lundy or somebody like that to do the electrical design part of the grant application. Right, Ben? I think that's,
Ben Hearn with GMB. So generally, I mean, so we do not do electrical engineering. Sergeant Lundy would have to basically put the proposal together in terms of their engineering to give us a cost to put in the application. We can put the application together. I mean, it's really just, painting the picture of what the need is and, what that looks like. But the cost, I can spitball some numbers, but I wouldn't want to be held to them, so. Because it's not, it wouldn't be our proposal.
So, in all discussions, Barbara, is the main concern aesthetics or resiliency?
I believe it's resiliency. But it's pretty much equal with aesthetics. But the application would tout the resiliency, and that's why DEMA was pushing for us to do this from a resiliency standpoint.
Because I think, from my perspective, the higher importance for resiliency is on the beach side. I mean, that's the higher wind zones. Not that, I don't, you get resiliency out of it, but it seems like maybe that's not the right priority.
If we weren't digging up the road, it certainly wouldn't be.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
understand.
it's taking advantage of, yeah.
So
it's a
what's
tough
the
one.
favor of the board?
Can I add one more thing? Ben Hearn, GMB.
No, you don't have to do it every time, man. Come on.
One thing to note too is to consider is the timing of all this and how it plays into the 4th Street actual construction. So we're currently under contract to do the water, sewer, stormwater, roads, all that stuff, minus the electrical. The concern I think we would have is going for an application for design would push things out in terms of going to construction on those jobs. I think there is a chance that if you went for the construction grant, if they went for a construction grant for that project for the electric, that could be gone for, but you would have to have the design completed first. So and obviously, as you said, Barbara, the dates are fluid and we're not really sure how that's going to pan out. The last we talked with DEMA, there was a discussion, okay, there's the March 18th deadline, and then there's potentially a second funding window, say October-ish, that may open. Obviously, that's fluid now. But if we submitted for the construction loan then, provided whoever gets the electrical design done, you may have that in place to be able to do the construction under that grant, provided you get a grant.
So if I can interpret what you're saying, I think you're suggesting we might want to self-fund the design portion, and the first step to that would be getting a cost estimate for the design.
I think.
But
I think the timing would not line up.
You're saying there's still risk for the water, sewer, stormwater project?
So the funding kind of timeline to go from application to getting the funds has been about a year and a quarter to get the funds. So it's, going for design, I don't think you could go for the design loan, wait a year and a quarter, and then also want to go for the construction loan. I think you'd have to kind of pick one or the other to go with that.
And which do you think would be more expensive?
I would say the construction might be.
By orders of magnitude.
Yes.
So might the board approve obtaining a cost estimate for engineering design?
I make a motion for that.
Someone can have a discussion.
Yeah, you gotta hold.
I know, I said, we certainly could talk to Jeremy at Sergeant Lunday.
You have a motion, so you have to get a second to go on to discussion.
I second the motion.
Okay.
So now you can discuss.
Thank you, Mike.
I'm concerned that conduit in the ground is going to stay in the ground empty for a long time. And is because I believe the cost of making the switch to actually put the electric underground with, it's not just a little bit, you've got to do all of it at the same time. I am imagining to make any sense. And just, I'm imagining it's going to be a lot more money than we want to spend for resiliency. I have no objection to hyping resiliency or whatever will help get grants. But I don't see in this situation that it's prudent.
I'm wondering if this might be a way to entice Verizon Fiber. You know, if instead of this cable
everyone-
stuff,
I think everyone's moving on from fiber,
really?
from that, because with the growth in Wi-Fi, I mean, there are towns actually, I know of, where they're discontinuing copper for telephone service.
I'm thinking of for internet as well, though.
Fiber, not so much because of longevity, but because ultimately you need to backhaul those telco wireless. Wrong one.
Not so easy, is it?
Doing both sides. Well, ultimately, you need some form of fiber to backhaul those wireless signals. So getting rid of fiber per se isn't necessarily,
No,
I mean, fiber can stay in the ground for a long period of time before they have to replace it, where your pot lines, your plain old telephone lines, they are discontinuing a lot of those services, just as you said.
Yeah, that's what I was referring to.
But the 5G, they need that fiber optic line in order to backhaul those high data demands.
Right.
We are doing, we have committed to putting conduit in Pilot Town. The road area is that true? That's what I
The
remember.
contractor's out there now, the board approved the contract for Accutrends to run conduit for the existing electric out at Pilot Town Village is underground now. It's not in any type of conduit at all.
Okay, so that's the difference.
So what they're doing is they're running conduit, and our staff will make that transfer over of the electric portion itself. But Accutrends is just running the conduit in the same area where existing lines are now, but they are all underground out there.
And are they using the same old lines and just pulling them in conduit, or it's new?
It's going to be all brand new lines, yes.
New as
Yep.
well.
Yes.
And it's not the only community, isn't Cape Shores direct buried?
There's a lot of them. As you'll see in the capital improvements, red is requested, like Bay Breeze, same thing, old line, not in conduit. A lot of that was always done years ago, and Rhett's trying to, a little at a time, get conduit in for all these underground lines.
Okay, so in the case of Pilot Town, conduit goes in and it gets covered And then they pull the old wires, or they pull the old wires out, set them aside, and run them at the same time? What's kind of the sequence of,
Well, they won't disconnect anybody. They'll have the conduit and somehow the ends will be there somewhere that rec can get to, into the conduit. They'll pull the wires through.
the new wires?
Yes,
through,
to the
right?
conduit, and then they'll start transferring things over to the pad mount transformers that are already there. See, that's the little
So-
difference in this.
So the
because-
house already goes to a pad-mounted transformer,
Correct.
and the pad-mounted transformer has old cabling unenclosed in a conduit
On our side.
on our side.
Right.
And what we're doing is putting in the new conduit next to, I guess, the old wiring. And we're also gonna, at the same time, or in sequence, pull the cable, new cable through and connect it to the pad-mounted transformer at the same time as they disconnect the old wire?
Yes, they're not going to disconnect power to people's houses, then come back a week later.
Right,
And do it, yes.
right.
So it might be in sections at a time. They might do, from transformer to transformer, if it's according to how long it takes. But what they'll do is, again, the contractor's only required to put the conduit in. And then our staff will go back at some given time and say, okay, from whatever 4th Street to whatever the first cross street is. The staff will pull a new line in, have it ready, and then when they're prepared to make the connections on both ends, they will disconnect the old line, connect it right back in, so probably power should not be out to an individual homeowner for more than an hour or two, maybe.
When the new conduit is put in, it goes from A all the way to B as a starting point, and then they cut it at the transformers and put new kind of sweeps into the transformer and out to continue it,
I would.
if you know.
Yeah, I don't know exactly, but I think it's probably easier for them to run that continuous conduit from point A to B.
Right,
And then,
go back
then
and
there'll be cut-ins.
and make
Yes.
connections
Yeah.
as needed, cutouts and so on.
So there's gonna have to be a splice box
Yeah.
at each transformer to be able to get the main line and then tee off to each of the transformers. So,
So that's the way it would be done, to have all of the conduit, all of the new cabling to remain in an enclosure in a reasonable way.
So in that area, where is the cable, the coax cable for TV and stuff? Is that
I'm assuming it's
just
all
direct
underground.
buried?
It's
Direct
all- yeah,
buried?
it's all underground.
That definitely has nothing to do with BPW.
in that case, no, it's existing.
Because that's with Chantel, they're trying to coordinate their new, the installation of their new cable. And since we have no poles out there, they have to underground.
And
And that's
so-
what they don't want to do, because it costs them more money to underground than it does to connect to our
And
poles.
so, if I remember, the $136,000 conduit job at Pilot Town is just the conduit and splice boxes,
It's to run the
and it's
conduit.
not the cable.
We got, no, it's,
Okay.
the
So that's-
wiring is ours.
And it's an additional cost to us, in addition to whoever's funding the 136.
We're funding that.
Okay.
And the relative footage of Pilot Town?
I can't remember, but for some reason, I wanted to say it's $25 a foot, I think. But
Yeah,
don't hold me to that number.
Because I'm trying to picture versus Fourth Street.
Yeah.
You know, what the relative lengths are, but it doesn't really make any difference. It's not important.
So we have an open motion. Is there more
Motion
discussion?
again was,
To ask GMB for an estimate
Not
to,
GMB.
no? Not go through GMB?
Well, because they don't do electrical.
No, but they would manage the project, right?
We would go to Sergeant and Lundy to get the design, a proposal.
An estimate
An
of,
estimate for a proposal for the design aspects of it.
which also would include money applied to the design guesstimate? I'm only asking,
no, we'd just be asking for a cost estimate to do a design.
okay, engineering.
Yes,
The
and
motion
change.
was to get a cost estimate for the design. The clarification was from Sergeant and Lundy. It was moved by Bob. It was seconded by Barbara, and that's the motion that's on the table. So it's a cost estimate from Sergeant and Lundy.
And didn't Bob, you have or Richard, an amendment to it?
I didn't mean to.
Okay. So that's the motion.
And
And
it
so it's the-
applies to Fourth Street,
to Fourth
Correct.
Street.
right?
So the motion is to,
That's my clarification.
what's the motion that you have?
It's a motion to get a cost estimate from Sergeant and Lundy to put conduit on the Fourth Street for electric.
Well, it's
But-
Fourth
so-
Street and Park, because we're digging up across the park to Johnson. If, you know,
Streets we're digging up,
So
that we wouldn't have to do it again.
right.
So the question is for that motion, is the estimate to be no cost to us? Or funding something for them to put the estimate together? I just want to know what our ground rules are.
It's an estimate of the cost to do the design. Yes?
Right, no cost. All right. Cool.
That means that they're doing this for free?
Yeah,
Okay,
Giving us an estimate for free, yes.
okay.
well, that's what I
I
wanted
think
to
we're
know.
asking a question, and
Yeah.
if they came back and said it's $1 bazillion, we'd say no. But if they said it was $10,000, maybe we'd say yes.
Yeah, and that's what my question was, is that, are we willing to pay Sergeant and Lundy anything to give us an estimate? Because they're gonna have to do some scoping work,
I would think so.
so.
So
or
yes, the answer is yes.
To giving them money.
Yeah, but we don't, have them ask for it first. Just ask them if they'll do it for free. And if they
Well,
come
that's
back,
gonna delay, because then it has to come back to the next
Right.
meeting.
well,
I'd like to have, if you're willing to
Why
do
don't
it,
we
give us
ask-
a not to exceed.
yeah, not to exceed.
Why don't we, well, let's modify it and just say we have the general manager ask for an estimate from Sergeant Lundy to tell us how much it's gonna cost roughly to do an estimate, and authorize him to spend as much as $10,000.
That's what I was looking for, is what that upper bound number is. That's what, sorry for being
to do
convoluted.
that.
That's all right.
And
Sorry, that's what we do.
All right, so then the motion,
Motion's been amended to direct the general manager to pursue the cost estimate not to exceed $10,000. That was Bob's amendment, so presumably you are comfortable amending your motion.
And I will second with the amendments,
Okay.
yes.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 4-0, 1 absent, 4. All right, next item. Open forum general discussion on the capital budget.
Not yet. Next one, next number.
I have a question. Line 11 underwater, the saltwater monitoring wells, that number seemed low to me because when we had our discussion, was it last week, with DENREC about the source water protection area and the wells will need, it sounds like we were thinking 1 well, they're suggesting 3.
Yes, that's correct, and this is just for the 1 well at this time. We got a price from AC Schultes to the well, and Bennett supplied me with a price estimate for the monitoring devices for the wells. That's the reason for the roughly the $16,000. We have a spot secured on the Mitchell's Corner property, an easement for this. The thought was we would go ahead and do this well since we've already had the location secured, and then possibly in the future, because there is one of the areas that was under discussion was the along the Schley Avenue, the repurposing of an existing well that's there, that price would be a little different. So we didn't want to hold anything else up. Also, as Barbara noted during our conversation, we found out that there was a existing monitoring well on the old library property, or the Rollins Center. I have to follow up with the gentleman that we were speaking to, because they're utilizing that well for a saltwater monitoring well themselves. Don't know the depth. So, yeah, it's.
Why is the library?
It's high ground. That's the idea of it. I think it's placed there because it was upland.
So if there's an opportunity to use that well, or try to piggyback off of that, we just didn't want to hold this up at this time, this one. So yes, this would be just for 1 well.
1 well.
Yeah,
Okay.
for 1 well.
But going back in time, I remember when we negotiated with Mitchell's Corner, I was under the impression they were going to put the well in.
They're putting wells in for their retention pond stuff, but not this monitor well, because this is part of our water allocation permit required by Denver.
Robin's correct.
Okay. Tom's wrong then.
Robin's correct.
I suspect I suspect we'll need another monitoring well over in the new road area, Canary Creek area.
Yes, there was discussion, that's one of the ones that's preliminary is out in that area. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. The motion to approve.
Kim, did you
Oh, what's that? Is there other questions on capital budget?
So it actually has my name next to it, but it's gonna be mostly Robin for the operations of what's actually happening in these projects. My input really is that we have enough money in our reserves and operating that we can afford to do this current fiscal year. And as we start introducing the new financial framework, we will be able to tell what we can afford in the future.
Unless the board would prefer, I don't think it's necessary to go line item by line item. As we know, most of these projects are actually in the works already. You're talking about, and I'll go in just on the water side, you're talking about the 4th Street project, Hornkill. The canal crossing is already, well, I can give you details on it, but everybody's kind of aware of all those details.
And the green lines are the ones that are in the budget this year.
The green is the ones we've got funding for.
Right,
Yes.
funding for. Right.
The others are on there, but we have to fund them.
Self-fund.
Self-fund, yes.
I had a question on line 57, Burton to Sussex Underground Project.
Okay, that is, there's a electric line that is on utility poles right now that goes from Burton, runs between the school property and Mariners Retreat. That runs all the way to Highland Acres, and then it turns and runs between Highland Acres property and the school. It's a electric, the preference would be to underground that because of accessibility. Since the school put in a track, it makes it harder to get to that property because it used to be an open field. Also, on the other side, the Mariners Street homes got built. So getting a truck back in there is going to be a little bit more difficult than what it used to be. We do have an easement through the school if we have to, but it was just felt by the electric department that we would just go ahead and underground that section and remove all those poles.
It's interesting to see the cost estimate for that, and I'm curious about the length of that project versus, I got a one-track mind, what can I say?
Nothing wrong with that.
This project had been in the capitals, I think, for several years, so I can't verify where that number come from. It's nothing that's really, really important. The line is fine, everything's okay. It's just for future, could be an issue if we have to keep getting back there. Also, the first properties that are on that corner where the pole starts, where the pole line starts going towards Mariners Retreat, is probably, you're never gonna get a truck back there because there's fences put up on both sides of the property line. So they're going to have to, if something happened that, they would probably have to underground that section anyway. So it's just, again, something for future to keep in mind and hopefully get that taken care of. If you want me to continue to go, or if there's any, I mean, I can just answer any questions if you like, or however the board feels it's necessary to move forward. Like I said, majority of these projects were just continuations of other projects that have been on here. The majorities of these projects have been on the capital plan in the past. They are now just been moved forwards.
I'm happy to see all the undergrounding projects.
Again, a lot of the undergrounding, the two that are there, the Bay Breeze and the Jefferson Apartments, all of them are already undergrounded. It's just that they are, again, they're not in conduit, and they're old lines.
Okay.
The only recent undergrounding we did was on Bay Avenue, wasn't it?
I think that was probably when they redid.
Well, when they did.
No, because Bay Avenue, there's poles on Bay Avenue.
No, but there's that one house that wanted the lines underground.
Oh, yeah, they never did.
Oh, they never did that?
I don't think
Okay.
they ever did, because I think they
Well, they
ended
might
up.
last.
What, they wanted to just do in front of their house.
Right.
And Rhett was like, that ain't happening. Because again, they would, if you just underground, what was gonna happen is, they would have to have, the guide wires to support the pole then. Because then this section would not have any wire to kind of keep the poles from pulling. So they would have to go on
Tractor
farther
beams?
back, yeah, so. I think he decided it wasn't worth it.
Another question I had was line 67, the Itron handheld replacement. Is that for both water and electric, or is it just, yeah?
Yes, that's for water and electric, and
Okay.
it's, our system is on its last leg. So we got some coming, so hopefully help's on the way.
Okay, and if we get AMI at some point in the future, will we still need an Itron?
This system,
Yeah, go.
I don't want to steal your thunder.
No, you've talked, I mean, again, that goes back to the AMI thing. We've had some initial, Josh has had some initial conversations with some private firms. As we all know, we were denied the funding through DMAC. So there was an option of probably going with some private companies.
Well, we weren't denied by DMAC. They didn't get the
Through
grant
DMAC,
money.
yes,
Yeah.
correct, that's true, sorry, yep, yep,
DMAC's not at fault, so.
yeah.
This equipment will be needed regardless whether I go with an AMI or not, because that will assist us with our walk-by and our trouble readings. So even if we go to a full AMI solution, we're still going to be subject to some form of walk-by with trouble reads. Because we're at sea level, a lot of the pits fill up with water, the water pits fill up with water, and RF signals do not transmit through water, period. So we will need to go back several times. And sometimes even these antennas wouldn't be able to pick them up. And in those cases, we'd still have to roll a truck on those extreme cases. So this equipment on that line would still be utilized regardless of what solution we go with, because we're so heavily vested with this particular company, Itron.
But it wouldn't be needed at all for electrical, correct?
Oh, highly unlikely, but
Yeah, I
it's
mean-
still one solution that covers both of the
I
meter
realize
types.
it's common, but, I mean, unless something went out on the AMI system, we weren't getting a signal or whatever.
Correct. And this is a one-to-one replacement of what we currently are utilizing. It's just the newer version of it, just because they're no longer, and they haven't for some time, supported the equipment that we're running and the software that we're currently using for the collection is end of life in about 3 years, a little under 3 years. So we are going to have to make this switch just because we're running out of time.
So the Itron system, are there a bunch of handhelds and then a base unit, or how does it all work? I mean, when I look online for Itron readers, you know, they're a few $1,000s, and so I'm guessing we have something much bigger than that.
Would you like me to address it? So currently we have 2 handhelds, and each one of those handhelds attached to a single, I guess, a stronger antenna. And we read most of our reads through that stronger antenna in which that handheld connects to. Once those 2 sever, the handheld unit itself can go get a read, but it has to be substantially closer to those endpoints before they can reach it. And I mean substantially closer. So I have to be in your yard in order to collect that. That's why residents will see us sometimes in their yards collecting these reads, just because we're not just hanging out in front of your yard, hitting a button, playing with a Game Boy. We are actually trying to collect the reads. So, sorry.
Thank you.
Someone says barns in my backyard.
We've taken several actions over the last several years, and we've improved some areas, but we're still aging and we're still improving. So
Who you talking about?
We improve with age.
like
Oh,
wine.
All right, any other questions?
Thank you.
Not for me, those were my questions, thank you.
And do I have a motion to approve the O&M, no, the capital budget, excuse me.
I make a motion that we approve the capital budget for the
526.
25-26 fiscal year.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, O&M budget. And it's Kim's.
This one is actually me. So you have quite a plethora of paperwork for this one. You have a presentation, you have a breakdown of the accounts. Oh, I'm on mute, sorry.
Oops. Oh,
You have a presentation, you have a breakdown of accounts for each category. You have graphs to show comparisons from last year and the composite of your revenues and expenses. You have my O&M notes, and you have the actual cash reserve policy and the O&M revenue and expense budget. So my hope is that this presentation is going to pull all of that together. So this is your first paper in the, I think, tab 14. So just an overview of electric, for the O&M, we are at a $1.8 million surplus. For our capital, we will be self-funding $1.1 million. There's about $62,000 of developer projects. Our final cash investment balance at the end of this coming fiscal year will be about $3.6 million in unrestricted and $435 in restricted. And as you can see from the table, we are actually over the needs for operations according to the cash reserve policy, but we are underfunded in capital with a total shortage of about $45,000.
a question. The 570,000 that we're under for restricted funds, I don't fully understand that. I thought those were funds that were assigned for a specific purpose, and therefore, how can we be under?
So for our cash reserve policy and our capital, it's 15% of the 5-year. That is the goal for our restricted funds. And when I say restricted funds, it means capital, that it has to be used on capital.
Okay, so these are not restricted in the sense they were from a grant or from a loan. I see, okay. Thank you.
It worked for the first one.
I'll help you out with that.
Okay,
Sorry.
one back, we want water. For water, the O&M, and when I say O&M, that's operations and maintenance. I speak in a lot of lingo. Operations and maintenance, we have about $3.2 million surplus. For our capital, we have about $465,000 that we will be self-funding. We have debt service payments of about $146,000, and that is including one payment of the canal crossing this year. We have about $220,000 in developer projects. At the end of this, for the next fiscal year, where it'll be about $2.5 million for unrestricted and $1.8 million for restricted. And as you can see, we're actually over our cash reserve policy requirements. And if you remember when we set the rates, we front-loaded the rates because we knew that we had such big projects and debt coming our way.
Okay, but in this, you have gone and, for the new developments and so on, you've basically counted up how many houses and when you think they'll come on stream and started to include that.
Yep, that'll be the breakdown from here. And for wastewater, you keep stealing my thunder, Bob.
All right, somebody get a piece of tape.
I'll just turn my microphone on.
For the wastewater O&M, about a $1.4 million surplus. We have $645,000 for cash-funded capital projects. We have close to $1 million in debt payments, and that includes one payment for Headworks this year. about $180,000 for developer projects. Our final cash investment balance would be about 2.4 million unrestricted and about 276,000 for restricted. So as you can see from our table, we're about $1 million overall shortage for wastewater funding.
So if we can only not pay Inframark for a year.
If we didn't have to make any wastewater treatment plant, that's about $850,000 debt service payment.
Put on your coveralls.
For stormwater O&M, we have about $165,000 surplus. For capital, we have about $275,000 that we are self-funding. We have about $12,000 for developer projects. And at the end of the year, we'll have about $25,000 unrestricted. We do not have a impact fee for stormwater, so we don't have a way to build our capital reserves. So that number is always going to show as a shortage, but overall, we're $742,000 short.
So does our cash reserve policy make sense for stormwater is, I guess, the question.
I would say no. And I will say that is a subject that we want to talk about in the Finance Committee of our policy for cash reserves. And to actually start breaking down, instead of just the overview, for O&M electric revenue, we're increasing about 1.1% from last year. We're not doing a commodity rate increase because we had that large increase. We are continuing to follow the 2022 rate resolution for the ready-to-serve fees. Our new customers are expected in White's Pond, Fisher's Cove, Dutchman's Harvest, and we have 2 commercials from Gibbs and the Beach House of Lewes. For our revenue other, the 3 big components of that is developer fees, and that's by far larger, and then disconnection and late fees. Our non-operating revenue is going to increase about 6.7%. The biggest impact is the impact fees. We're expecting about 140 new residents and 2 commercial.
You think it's optimistic to think that the Beach House of Lewes and the Gibbs condos will come online this fiscal year? Or, I mean, next fiscal year?
So we did have some meetings with GMB as well of what their timeline, what they expect the timeline to be. And I think that one, and there's another one that was close.
These 2 projects are close to getting their final approval, hopefully. I mean, it looks like they're at the last phases, and the carriage house is probably one of the other ones. Again, it's all speculative on when the actual start will, but they're really close to getting their final approval. So if, say, May, then they should be able to move forward.
Because our fiscal year doesn't end until March 31st.
Right, right.
On the purchase power rate, decreasing by 3.7%, how comfortable are you with that, given the unknowns?
That is what has been adopted already in DMAC's budget. However, that doesn't mean it will stay that way, depending on how everything plays out. That is the best knowledge I have right now. So like you said, the purchase power is decreasing by 3.7% in the rate. The expense overall will be down 2.3% because we will have increased usage with our new customers. Salaries and benefits are decreasing. We did have 5 employees this year. With George retiring, we had to train someone new. Repairs and maintenance is increasing for the biannual substation maintenance. Professional and contractual is being reduced. Cost of service study is the biggest component there. And we did add some additional time for GMB work for grants as we pursue more. Administrative increased by 4.8%. This is the full year of our newest employee, the rent increase, and the RKL salary rate increase suggestions to match the market rates.
Now, are they also included under salaries? And these are the administrative to go with it? What?
So
I don't
administrative
understand.
salaries goes in the administrative line.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So salaries doesn't cover everyone in the BPW.
Correct.
It only covers the operations people. Thank you.
And then depreciation is increasing by 18.2%. Last year, we added about $775,000 depreciable assets. I am. Our water revenue is increasing by 7.5% from last year. It's following the same rates from 2022. We are expecting customers in White's Pond, Fisher's Cove, Dutchman's Harvest, Roosevelt Landing, Tower Hill, Mitchell's Corner, Capes Cove, and then the 2 commercial properties. For the revenue other, the biggest components are developer fees, plumbing inspections, and meter sales. For our non-operating revenues, they're decreasing by 57.9%. That sounds large, but that is mostly coming from the grants and assistance that we have about 2.9 million of principal forgiveness scheduled for this year for Donovan Smith. And also that effect on non-operating revenues is the interest expense for canal crossing, adding that to our debt, and the impact fees for the 277 residential.
So on the new customers, I assume most of these would probably have separate irrigation lines, so they're paying irrigation rate, not, but they're quite large land plots. So is this taken into account?
I did not count irrigation hookups, just the meter hookups, the domestic.
Because well, I think the irrigation load is going to be quite large from the majority of these places.
So when I did the usage for the operational revenue, I looked at the past 3 years of history of an average usage per household. So that's what I used for that. But then when the non-operating revenue for impact fees, I did not count irrigation, which I think it's 1,100 to hook up for irrigation.
And just on that, there are several of these developments that are outside the city, so they will not be,
Have irrigation wells.
yeah. The Tower Hill, the Mitchell's Corner, and the Capes Cove. I'm pretty sure they won't ask for an irrigation meter when they can have a well.
So it's really Dutchman Harvest, Fisher's Cove, and White's Pond.
Yeah, and Dutchman's Harvest is probably going to be more of a community irrigation.
Yeah, and actually Dutchman's Harvest isn't a large square footage. It's all paved.
Yeah.
So it's really, okay. So it's just the 50, it's really White's Pond and Fisher's Cove, which are substantial lots though, so they're probably above the average usage. All right, I'll be to the better.
I do recall Dutchman's Harvest, though, asking if they could get a relief from a well. Am I good? A relief from a well because they were intending to fill their irrigation, their ponds. Remember that? they'd asked for a waiver to allow them to have, so I do think that they are there is gonna be volume there from an irrigation well. They were talking about filling them for aesthetic purposes, so.
I know I've heard that discussion,
Yeah, you recall that, right?
I remember that, yeah.
but it's not something we've agreed to, and, all right?
For the water expenses, it is increasing by 1.7%. Professional and contractual is being reduced by 13.6%. Again, this is gonna be cost of service study, and then also for water, the LCR postcards and surveys will be reduced, the wellhead protection study, and the dive team. Administrative is increasing by 4.8% for the same reasons, and depreciation is increasing by 10.5%. We add about $1.5 million depreciable assets. Pointing right at you, Josh.
No, I went back.
No, you're good. I want, well, wastewater revenue. One back. Thank you.
I think we were both doing it at the same time.
This is increasing by 11.7%. Again, the same new customers. The revenue other is made up primarily of developer fees. For non-operating revenues, it's decreasing by almost 70%, and it's the same kind of thing as the water for the principal forgiveness for Donovan Smith. We are putting one payment in for headworks and the impact fees for 247 residents and 2 commercial. And under grants and assistance, we also have the pump station hazard mitigation. For the expenses, they are increasing by 4.4%. The repairs and maintenance is actually increasing by a pretty large amount. That's over the inflation. Most of that is coming from Clean Delaware. They've already told us the new rates. That is increasing by 5.6%.
That's annoying because Sussex is supposed to be doing the transport, right? We put in that special hookup so their trucks could come and get our sludge.
We do also have Sussex bills.
Yeah, but that was so they're doing the hauling, but.
Yeah, the hauling. That's what Clean Delaware does, don't they?
The sludge hauling.
Yeah.
I think Jeff had said something, some of it do is, I think they were short on drivers or something in the county.
Yeah, maybe they've hired some by now.
That would be a good thing.
And I can follow up with Jeff to see if he thinks that usage will go down. And it could be an adjustment before the approval. And the same on this slide, depreciation increasing, administrative costs increasing. Our O&M revenue is increasing by 20.8% from last year. And the same information, revenue other is almost exclusively developer fees. For expenses, I got it. For expenses, it is decreasing by 1%. The biggest impact is the cost of service study because it actually had its own charge. And since there's so little expenses that actually goes to stormwater, it has a huge effect. And the same thing for administrative. To finish up for these last 2 slides, the impact on residential customers. I did the most common residential customer. For electric, I did a single phase and 800 kilowatt hour usage. Is going to increase by 60 cents per month, and that is average of the year, because the PCA will work its way down since the wholesale rate is going down. Water is 4,000 gallons and 5/8 inch. It'll be 32 more cents per month for in-city, 48 cents for out-of-city. Wastewater is 32,000 gallons and 5/8 inch. It'll be $5.60 for in-city, $8.40 for out-of-city. Stormwater is increasing by $1.75 a month. So the total monthly increase, if you have all utilities with BPW, for in-city it would be $8.27, out-of-city would be $9.48. And finally, unknowns and risks. For all utilities, the uncertainty of federal funds availability. They did just announce that there will be changes to the notice of funding opportunities. They didn't specify on it at all, they just said changes. So we don't know what's happening. For the electric, the single feed into town, we still have not been able to secure assistance for AMI and the possible addition of the conduit at 4th Street. If we can't get a grant for that, that'll have the large impact, which you guys talked about.
So just interjecting here, on the second line, I finally got DP&L's attention again. You know, remember we've been talking about a second line and going back 4 or 5 years, and then after the power outage in October 2023, I think it was. And so DP&L, they've had lots of changes in management with Exelon, you know, selling off all their generating fleet, and they've got new people in charge. So I've got a meeting with them in March sometime to hear out or to express our concerns and hear back from them. Because remember what the issue was, is that they want us to either go to Harbison or all the way down Route 1. And that's just cost prohibitive. So stand by to stand by, but the second line, you know, is still alive.
For water regulations, and I just pulled out the PFAS in particular, we did file an NOI to build a treatment center based on the emerging contaminants findings and regulations. If we don't secure funding for that, that's a $16 million project.
If those rules don't get rescinded,
Yes.
right?
That's why,
Yeah,
based on emerging contaminants findings and regulations, because we don't know.
yeah.
Wastewater, obvious, the long-term plan, and stormwater is also regulations, but specifically MS4 designations. Right now, it's scheduled for fiscal year '28.
I'm surprised you don't have under unknowns the Army Reserve and office planning.
Yep. That can be added.
You have the MS4 scheduled for '28. Have we gotten any? That's still a
Yeah.
guess.
Yes.
We've been guessing that number, we've been guessing numbers.
Yeah, that falls in the big unknown.
Yep. And that was to hopefully pull together everything that you have in your packet, the impacts of cash, the impact of revenues, your expenses, your capitals. And this was presented to the Finance Committee. They approved to move forward to presentation to you guys, that right now we are sound that we can afford everything that we're doing. And we'll continue looking in.
Next year or so.
Yep, then we'll continue looking into the future of all the unknowns that are coming, that will hopefully present itself.
I like the explanation of the GL account descriptions. That was very helpful. But I'm not entirely clear what falls under administrative.
So that is anything from the contract that we have with Austin will fall under that. anything for the administrative staff to use. So in our GL accounting, we have the account, and then we do a .1 after if it's administrative, that our building is using it. So it's gonna be salaries and benefits, it's gonna be rent, it's a lot of different things.
But it is not anything on Slay Avenue or those kind of things. Or no treatment plant.
Correct. So that'll get split out to the actual utility.
So under other supplies and expenses, rental is listed. Is that rental of equipment?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. And I was surprised to see repairs and maintenance includes equipment. So that it was eye-opening and very helpful. Thank you.
So the thought there is that that is needed to do repairs and maintenance.
Yeah, and I normally would have thought of administrative as like, things like printing and reproduction, the things, a lot of the things you have under other supplies and expenses, so that
So-
clarified things for me.
So all of those accounts will also be under administrative. It'll just have that .1
.1,
that follows it
so
to
you know, okay,
know that it goes there.
good, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
And then in the next month, for the next board meeting, I'll have any updates, any changes, if anything becomes more clear than it was now.
So is there any other questions? Do I have a motion to approve the O&M budget for 2025 and fiscal 2026?
Do you want to wait until next month to do that, if there's any changes? Or do you
What's
want to
the
do a
deadline?
tentative?
Well, what's the deadline on?
The deadline is that it has to be presented to you a month before new rates go in.
Okay, well, if you'd rather wait, that's fine.
You can approve it tentative, any changes that have to be presented at the next board meeting as well.
It's the favor of the board.
My recommendation, just from past practice, is this is when you receive the budget, and then you would approve it in the next month. So I would recommend just stick to that practice. You've received it, and then next month it'll be up for vote.
I did have another question.
Okay?
Transformer warning labels. What's that all about? That should be kind of minor, I would think. Do they wear away? Do they have to be changed so many years?
They did have to be updated. The phone number was not correct on there. So that had to be updated, and there was like sun fading and things like that.
You gotta be fully transparent, Barbara.
Yep.
Jeez.
Right, then moving on.
Make a motion to accept the
No, we decided we're gonna wait until next month.
you're receiving it.
You can say motion to accept, you don't have to, but if you want for formalities, you can
But
say.
you said that was tradition, or the,
Well, it's tradition not to vote, to approve it next month, but let's do a motion to accept the presentation.
okay, I make a motion that we accept the presentation.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
So we accepted it, we did not approve it.
Let them know, ask questions.
Did we approve the capital budget?
And you typically do that because it informs the budget you're approving next month.
Got it. Thank you.
Is our finance beagle besides the legal beagle?
Yes.
All right, moving on. So, interview general manager candidates. For the large audience we have, how many people are online, Josh?
We have somebody called Alan, Coast TV, and most of the staff.
Oh, Alan, who was here before.
So,
Can't confirm that.
we went through a process after Austin left in December, who's doing quite well. And baby Kate is adjusting to Pennsylvania and mountains.
And sheep,
No, horses.
and sheep.
Sure.
That's right, yeah.
Of soliciting resumes, we hired a firm called RKL, who does recruitment services, and we've used them before. And they presented us with 6 or 7 candidates. I did initial screening of the candidates and narrowed the slate down to 5 individuals. The board then, in executive session, interviewed the 5 individuals. And tonight will be to choose or present and interview our final candidate, and then to move on if that's successful. So the 5 candidates, we had a phenomenal slate. We had a lot of people with a lot of engineering experience, a lot of people with had run or operated other utilities before, but some of them ran like only gas utilities and so we narrowed the slate down, and our finalist, drum roll, Robin Davis. So, Robin was the best qualified in our opinion going forward. And so with that, tonight we're going to do is we're going to ask Robin some various questions and take questions from the audience and go through the process.
If I can just build off of that, Tom, just so folks know, and again, not a lot of public here, but just in terms of a process, under FOIA, a public body is to present its finalist in open session for a final interview, and that's an opportunity for the public to view, and then obviously in Lewes, we are open to public comment. And so that's what this opportunity is here. This is the final interview, final round of interviews for the finalist before the board discusses and determines next steps.
So I guess I'll start it off with Robin, how you doing?
I'm fine. I'm new to the area.
No, I guess the first question would be, you've been acting now for almost 2 months. The end of December to today.
It'd be a little over 2 months.
Hasn't he been acting since he came here?
Now. That's right. Keep the snide comments. I'll take care of that.
Okay. Never mind.
So, how have you found acting general manager as the acting general manager? What did you see that you didn't expect or expected?
I think overall it's really been an easy transition. I mean, being the assistant general manager for the 3 years that I was assistant, I was basically involved in a lot of things. I'm not saying the day-to-day, that what Austin's handled, but Austin was able to keep me informed on all the projects. So when he was out, the times he did get to go out, which was very few. Austin was a workaholic, which was kind of, I look at it, that it's a little troubling. He needed some time with his family, my personal opinion. But the times he was off, I felt I filled the role without missing a beat. So being able to step in when he was out, I didn't really see any change when he permanently left. So overall, I don't see it was a big adjustment on my part. And I don't think it's adjustment on the board's part because, again, I'd been here for 3 years and I was used to some of that interactions with staff, other staff members, with the board, with the city, in previous, as the assistant general manager.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that is that when Austin was out on maternity leave, you did the yeoman's effort.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Okay, I have a question. As general manager, who do you think should be, what positions do you want to hire to fill your senior management team? You know, assistant general manager, project manager, engineer, what do you think is needed in the BPW for it to function? Is that appropriate?
So just to clarify, we're not asking for names, individuals.
No,
It's
no.
just the
Yeah,
position.
yeah.
Yeah.
And can be global because we know you need time to think about it, so.
Yeah, at this point, at a minimum, we're going to have to fill the assistant general manager spot.
You can't do both?
We can. No, and again, as yeah, hey, okay, wait. But yes, at a minimum, we need to fill that spot that we have available right now. Yes, there's been talk about, do we need to bring in other positions like a project administrator, project manager, or an engineer to help offset some of the overload that we have. I think at this point, I think we're doing pretty good without, like Thomas said, without going through a whole big, review of what's going on, and maybe some adjustments can be made to positions. But overall, like I said, it's just, and I've said it before, our staff is phenomenal. From the electric department, the water department, they've all stepped up. Knowing this was, Austin, with him leaving, was a big hole. But the staff has just really just come together, and not that we weren't, but have really helped out. So at this point, I think the priority is the assistant right now, and then maybe at that point, when that assistant comes in, we could sit down and talk and kind of see. I'd like to do it collaboratively. I don't try not to make a lot of decisions on my own, because what decisions are made affects the whole staff.
And just tangentially along that point is that the staff at BPW in general, or specifically, has been phenomenal. I mean, everyone pulls together when there's a disaster, when Austin was out on maternity leave, in supporting you in the transition. And I know I've said it many times before, it's the reason why I'm here. I would otherwise. Other questions?
Your resume, thank you. On your resume, you indicated that you had held several licenses, professional licenses, but that they were no longer active. Could you explain why they're inactive, and could you reactivate them?
But There were four. Two were more pertaining to the business that the BPW is in right now, the water and wastewater. When I originally was employed at the town of Milton, I worked in the water and wastewater plant. As one of the, I don't want to say requirements, it was a recommendation which I really wanted to get more certifications in. I obtained my water license through the state and my wastewater two license through the state. When I switched positions in moving into the office, the state will not allow you to hold those licenses if you do not actively work in that area. So it wasn't my doing of getting rid of the license. The state made me get rid of my license. Is it something that can be done? Yes, it's a process. It takes time. The water is more, I guess, the first question would be maybe if the state would be even willing, as me as the general manager, does that classify me as being working in that department? So even if the state might not even let me go back and try to get those licenses.
So I think Richard's point is you have some background there.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, I've had it. Again, it's one of the requirements or one of the certifications I had for when I worked for this on the city side was a building official. Again, you have to have certifications to keep up your training and all that stuff. It wasn't required on my side, so it wasn't something that I felt I needed to keep. But at the water and wastewater, yes, it's something that probably can happen, but it's just whether the state allows that or not.
Think it's really necessary to reactivate those licenses if the state let you in order to be our general manager?
No, I don't think it's absolutely necessary. I don't think that's what I'm, does it help? Yes, it does. Because it shows, as Bob said, that I've worked in the field and obtained those licenses. So I have the knowledge and the background in them areas.
You have some other licenses now.
I have a current water plumbing license, a master plumbing license. I've had that 20-some years.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's another, that's one I'm not giving up because it takes 4 years of apprenticeship school and then 2 years of apprenticeship out in the field. And then you have to even apply to take the test. So it's 6 years of hard work.
And you were also in the Air Force for...
Yes, spent 7.5 years, proudly served in the United States Air Force. Yes, I did.
So just after you got out of the Air Force, you worked at where and where?
When I first got out, I actually got hired at a plumbing firm. That actually started my journey on my plumbing, to get my plumbing license, because to be able to go through the apprenticeship program, you have to have a licensed plumber to sponsor you. So I had to go through that process. And while going through that process, I switched jobs. And then when I got my license, I decided to start my own business. Had my business for 7 or 8 years. Thought a little bit, when I got a little older like I am now, would I keep continuing to crawl underneath houses and be able to do that? So I think I made the right decision that way. I still enjoy doing it. I still hold that license. Again, like I said, I am not giving that license up. That was hard to come by.
Could you go to Florida and finish the bathtub?
Now, you were doing a fine job there, Tom.
And then Milton, and then...
Then after I worked for Milton for 11 years, then I came here and worked for the town of Milton, our city of Lewes, in the building department for 7.5 years, and then I moved over into BPW. So I have experience, even when I was working in Milton, when I moved out of the wastewater and water, I was doing plan reviews, building permits. So I was involved in the infrastructure, the water and sewer planning, review of plans, working with the engineer. So indirectly, I've been in the utility field for over 30 years.
Is it fair to say that the only part of BPW's services that you haven't had direct experiences in the electrical?
Yes, of my, probably of the experience in all the fields, probably the electrical was my weakest. As I said in my initial interview, when I came on board, we weren't really doing a lot of internal reviews on plans. A lot of times the water and sewer were being handled by GMB, which they still are. The electrical portion was being kind of left out there. I brought Red in, who's our electric department supervisor, and brought on board this, that wanting the plan to be reviewed internally. Not only do I look at the plans, Rhett looks at the plans, and I have Emmett and Eric look at the plans while they're being initially done. We were finding some of the stuff, especially on the electrical end, since nobody was doing it, they were sticking stuff in areas
Really?
that now we're having, having to go back and either relocate or doing it on our own, because once the plan gets approved, the developer's saying, I'm not responsible for moving it anymore. So it's just bringing that on, but that also helped me in my experience sitting down with Rhett and understanding why something's here, something's there. So it's really, in the 3 years, it's really helped me out on that end.
So could you tell us why it should be here and not there?
There's certain transformer sizes, certain pedestals fit better in different areas, in certain spots. I mean, again, sometimes certain things have to be in a certain spot. When you're talking, we're getting more into the communities from the planning and zoning side, where we talk about trees. Trees are great, canopy and all that stuff. They don't do good around electrical services and water services. So there is a little bit of give and take, but overall, from the electrical end, it's pretty much, there's a kind of a standard location. You want them on the corners, because then you can get your transformers, your pedestals to serve multiple homes, instead of having to run that line more distance, stuff like that. So it's that little things you kind of learn about, just listening to some of the stuff that Rep will come up with.
So when did you start doing that, or when did BPW start doing that? And
It wasn't soon after I started.
okay,
Yeah, once we started looking at some under construction developments.
so which one would be the first? Do you recall?
Ooh. I wasn't here for, I'd have to really think back.
Well, give us some examples of things you might have moved.
Well, a lot of things, developers a lot of times like to put, I even go into water and sewer end of it. They want to put them together. They want to put the water and sewer on the corners of the property too. Well, that's where normally the transformer, that's where the light poles are at, that's where some of the trees are at. I look at trying to standardize stuff. The best position that I feel, and talking with Emmett, is to have the water and sewer in the center of the property. Standardize where they are. So when it's raining, when it's snowing, when the guys go out to have to shut the water off for an emergency or whatever, they're not searching the whole front of the property. If you got snow on the ground, you're pretty much set to know, okay, this is where our water line is, and not too far away is going to be the sewer line. So it just standardized stuff, and it's just street valves. Sometimes developer says, well, okay, this intersection 2 would work because you got one 300 yards down. Well, yes, things will work, but our preference is to usually have 3 street valves at the intersection. Developer's going to do as less as he can because of cost. We have a big thing about fire hydrants, dead end lines. We do whatever we can not to have dead end water lines, because you end up with issues with sediment but a lot of developers at a dead end line will put in what they call a blow off. It's a place to, kind of like a mini version of a fire hydrant, but it's underground. So if you use that blow off, you gotta pop the lid, get down, open it up, blow it off. My preference was to put a fire hydrant at the end of every dead end.
So what you came in and discovered was a need that was not being, a need that was not being tracked and put in communication and follow-up to make things better for BPW and for the community.
Correct. And as far as the fire hydrant, and I mean, you know, the requirement is you only need fire hydrants every so often. But there's nothing wrong with having that extra fire hydrant that at the end of a street, and it does. When we do our annual, our biannual flushing, it's easier for the staff to blow off that line with a fire hydrant there instead of digging around for a blow off. So there was just little minor things that, being in the field, having to do that, helps me when I look at plans to say, wait a minute, this is just a little bit more efficient way of doing things. Again, is it coming at the cost of maybe a developer? Yeah, but it makes it more efficient on our staff, and I think that's where we look at.
Developer leaves town.
That's right. Hopefully our staff stays, that's correct.
So,
You clearly know far more about this than I do.
so, Andrew, anything you'd like to ask?
Bob sort of built on what, since you mentioned you had come over from the city, which is, you know, our loss was BPW's gain. What do you feel that having worked on the city side is an advantage to you now that you work with BPW?
Again, I think knowing both sides, knowing how both sides operate, that's, again, one of the things I brought up at my interview was when I first came on the city side, was the time of the major disconnect between the city and the BPW. I think it was more of an upper level than it was staff level. I noticed when we would do demolition permits, we would go ahead, as from the city side, issue the demolition permit. Me knowing the utility side, say, well, what happens when they demo that house? The response that I got was, well, that's BPW's problem. Didn't like that response because again, for being on that side, I know it made it more of a pain, so I went and talked to Darren. Darren was the general manager at the time. I said, Darren, what is it, something that the city can do, the building department do, to help alleviate this? He said, can you just not issue this demo permit until we get to be able to disconnect the utilities? I said, well, I think it's easy enough for us just to hold the permit up. You just send us a letter when you cut it off and that it's done. So it's knowing both sides and knowing how it affects. And I try to tell that even within our own departments. Your actions in your department affects another department. You might not understand that, but I think we need to get everybody together so you can better understand how your piece fits, or you're not doing your piece affects this. So I think that really helped me out. And it goes the same way with solar. The solar, we would issue solar permits. When solar company would call us, say they're done, they're done. Well, the BPW side had an inspection that needed to be done also. Now, what happens is, when that gets done, the city requires that the BPW send over the final part 2, is what they call it, and the electrical inspection that has to be done before they'll issue final CO on the permits. So it's more on the permitting side, but it's been great working with, you know, on the city side. As I told Anne Marie, when I first applied for the general manager spot, the first person I told was Anne Marie. I said, Anne Marie, I don't want you to hear from anyone else, and it wasn't because I really wanted to leave. I said, I just think for my personal myself, it was a better opportunity for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I think you've given us a great overview, and
Thank you.
so,
Just one more question?
no,
When did he start?
I talked to my boss and see about 2 weeks.
that's the next item. You know, you're as bad as Bob, you steal all the thunder. I need 2 pieces of tape now. All right, so,
Does he have to leave the room?
no,
Okay.
just, he has to go blah, 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 blah.
You're just gonna talk bad about me in front of me now.
So, I mean, this is not for action, so the next item is for action. So the next item on the agenda is open forum general discussion on, well, first, I guess we should get agreement that we're gonna move to the next item, right?
Well, it's on the agenda, so you just have the discussion.
So, next item on the agenda is open forum, general discussion on general manager position. And this includes the contract. So, first, before we get to the contract, any general comments about what we just heard, and do you want to proceed?
Is it premature to offer a motion that we hire the candidate, Robin, for the open position of general manager of the BPW?
Or do we actually should review, get approval of the contract first, right?
Yeah, you can do this one of 2 ways. I think the immediate question on the table is, do you want to proceed with the contract discussion? And so the second piece, of course, is that you do have a draft contract that, should the board be interested in moving forward, there'd be a motion to approve that. So Barbara, to answer your question, if you wanted to make a motion to proceed in discussing hiring Robin, you can do it that way. Or if that's the sense of the board, you can just hold off and just have a motion on the contract. My recommendation is
What'd you say?
if the consensus of the board is to move to the contract, then I would just move to the contract discussion.
That's what I prefer.
Okay.
All right, so.
That's what she said.
I circulated to everyone in their packets a draft contract for hiring Robin. And so I guess the key points of it are, we're gonna hire, the contract says it's for a term of 5 years, renewable after that. The salary is $105,000. No,
50. Wait a minute.
you're worth every penny. Is $105,000 per annum.
150.
Right, I'm sorry.
Last minute negotiating.
I apologize. My brain
Depending
is.
on the minutes. He's like, did you get that, Jackie?
$150,000
Yes.
Per year?
per year, per annum,
Oh, okay.
not per year. We're not going there. And,
Robin he likes to get paid on a lunar calendar.
and it's got, the standard, well, so I think those are the main points that really need to be talked on this. So that is the contract that is on the table. Does anyone have any comments on it other than my disconnect between the brain and the mouth?
we have a motion to,
So I would ask for a motion to approve the agreement.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agreement.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Robin, do you agree to accept the agreement?
Despite Tom's
Yeah.
3 attempts.
Robin, your mic's off.
I need to make sure that it's a 150 now.
That's what's written. No, that's what's written. It's just not what comes out.
Yes,
So do you have a consensus on your side?
yeah, well, my team, yeah.
No objections?
No.
Okay.
So
In
where's
that
the
case-
champagne?
Congratulations, Robin.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. I do appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. With that, staff requests for agenda items. So you said in March, if I can collect my thoughts here, March, we're gonna come back with the O&M. And in the April timeframe, you're gonna come back with the pump stations, pump station, yeah, the overviews.
I don't know if April's the right timeframe.
Not for pump stations 3 and 4, 4 and 8, for the other ones we talked about, right?
The resiliency, I think originally we were talking about May, June, to come back with a follow-up.
For the big thing, I think we were talking March for pump station 3 kind of direction.
Okay,
Okay, just 3.
The way I was in.
for 3? For 3 only, okay.
Just 3 only.
Any other requests for agenda items for March?
Well, we have the budget.
Yeah, the O&M budget, yeah, I've got that.
No, by that time, we'll have some feedback from the workshop. And there might be an item from that.
That's a standing item on our agenda. But yes, and obviously, anything that comes up between now and the week before the meeting, just let Robin and I know.
Perhaps we should have a standard item about grants. Grants, grant applications, where they stand, where the proposals are.
I think that's a good idea, and make that a standing item.
Richard, will we have anything from the finance committee at that time? Possibly. So, potentially. And there's 2 big subjects here. One would be the model, one would be the model, and one would be the investment
Policies.
So maybe it's appropriate to have a time slot to bring everybody up to speed, because Richard's
Yeah,
committee's made a lot of progress.
Financial committee.
I'll put a question mark next to it, and you let me know if it's ready for March or not.
Yes.
I think there's one person you have not briefed on it.
Is that you?
Well, besides that, it
It's
would
not
be,
you with him, it's me.
it would be important to show it to the public, basically.
Did Kim's presentation, did that come out of the work of the committee, or did Kim put that all together by herself? Because it's very helpful.
So I put it all
Kim put
together
it
myself, but it was through the committee that they all wanted to see the connections, so.
And
I
she
figured
did
that
it.
would-
Nice, very nicely done, thank you.
But all the graphs and the charts Kim did. Yes, she did.
I fought with that PowerPoint. That's what I wanted to know, that I ended up just doing little snippets of the clips from the screen
I
because
noticed that.
I was like, I can't, this is,
Sometimes you just give in. Is that right, Josh?
I get it.
All right. So
Who do you think does my slides?
call to the press. Bill was here, he had to leave.
We have someone from Ghost TV.
Oh, I guess I should call to the public first. Oh, so is anyone there from Coast TV?
Gave them the ability.
Hello?
We may not have anything, that's okay.
Okay.
Okay. And call to the public, I'm sorry, I jumped over that one. Okay. Call to the ions. All right. Do I have a motion to, no, not adjourn. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Aye, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.